The crystal wine glass shattered in my grip, sending shards and red wine cascading across our pristine white tablecloth. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by my mother's sharp intake of breath. I'm Genesis, and this was supposed to be a normal family dinner, but there's nothing normal about being asked to sell your childhood home to fund your sister's wedding. "Genesis, darling, you're bleeding," my mother Veronica said, her voice dripping with the same artificial sweetness she used when manipulating potential donors at her charity galas. She dabbed at the spreading wine stain with her napkin, purposefully avoiding my eyes. "I'm fine," I managed through clenched teeth. "What's not fine is you asking me to sell Grandma Elena's house for Chiara's wedding. That house means everything to our family." Ciara, my younger sister, rolled her eyes and reached for her phone. "God, Jen, you're so dramatic. It's just a house, and this is my wedding we're talking about, the biggest day of my life." "Just a house?" The words felt like acid in my mouth. That house represents everything Grandma worked for, every double shift, every sacrifice. "Oh, please," my mother interrupted, setting down her wineglass with a sharp clink. "Your grandmother would have wanted Chiara to have her dream wedding. She always said family comes first." "Exactly," I shot back. "Family, not some overpriced party with crystal chandeliers and imported roses." Chiara's head snapped up from her phone. "They're peonies, actually, and they're only from Canada." "The house isn't for sale," I said firmly. End of discussion. My mother's perfectly maintained facade cracked. "Genesis O'Connor, you are being completely selfish. Your sister has found the perfect venue, the perfect dress. Everything is lined up except for the funding. The house is just sitting there, gathering dust." "I live there." "In that tiny neighbourhood? Darling, you could buy a lovely condo downtown with your share of the sale. Something more, suitable for someone in your position." I pushed my chair back from the table, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. "My position? You mean the position where I'm the only one who seems to remember what that house means? The only one who visited Grandma Elena every single day when she was sick?" "That's not fair," Chiara whined. "I was in college." "You were 20 minutes away at State, posting poolside photos while Grandma was dying." "Enough!" My mother slammed her hand on the table. "Genesis, you're making a scene. This is about family, about supporting your sister, about appearances," I cut in, like always. The room fell silent again. My mother's face had gone rigid, that familiar mask of disapproval I'd grown up with settling into place. "Wyatt's family is expecting a certain standard," Ciara said quietly, naming her fiancé. "The Harrises have a reputation to maintain." I laughed, but there was no humour in it. "Right, because God forbid we disappoint the Harrises. Better to just erase our own family's history instead." My mother stood, smoothing her silk blouse. "I can see you're not in a reasonable mood tonight. We'll discuss this again when you've had time to think about what really matters." "I know exactly what matters," I said, grabbing my purse, "and it's not for sale." As I walked toward the door, Chiara called out, "You know, for someone who claims to care so much about family, you sure have a funny way of showing it." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Without turning around, I said, "Grandma Elena worked 3 jobs to buy that house. She raised us there after Dad left. She taught us about dignity, about working for what matters. But I guess those lessons didn't stick for everyone." The door slammed behind me with a satisfying bang. In my car, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. The nerve of them, trying to sell my home, my inheritance, for a single day of extravagance. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Think about what you're doing to this family." I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. They wanted me to think about what I was doing? Fine. I'd give them something to think about. Starting the engine, I pulled away from my mother's perfectly manicured lawn, her perfectly appointed house, her perfectly planned manipulation. But I wasn't the same little girl who used to bend to her will, not anymore. They wanted a lesson in family values. I'd give them one they'd never forget. The porch steps creaked under my feet as I climbed them, just as they had for the past 30 years. Every sound in this house held a memory, and tonight they were screaming at me louder than ever. I found myself in Grandma Elena's old room, now my bedroom, running my fingers along the worn spines of her books. The faint scent of her lavender perfume still lingered in the pages, even 3 years after her passing. "You wouldn't believe what they're trying to do, Grandma," I whispered, pulling out her favourite photo album. The doorbell rang, startling me. Through the window, I spotted Emmett's familiar silhouette on the porch. I'd texted him about the dinner disaster, and of course he'd come running. "I brought reinforcement," he announced when I opened the door, holding up a bottle of wine and take-out bags. "Though maybe we should skip the wine, considering your earlier glass-crushing performance." I managed a weak smile. "Very funny. Come in." We settled in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Grandma Elena had taught me to make her famous empanadas. Emmett pulled out containers of Thai food, while I grabbed plates from the cabinet she'd hand-painted with tiny blue flowers. "So," he said, passing me the pad thai, "want to tell me what really happened?" "They want me to sell the house for Kiara's wedding." The words still tasted bitter. Mum actually said it was just gathering dust. Emmett's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "The house that Elena worked 3 jobs to keep? The house where she raised all of you after your dad split?" "The very same." I stabbed at my noodles. "You know what the worst part is? They act like I'm the unreasonable one, like I'm somehow betraying the family by not funding Kiara's fairy tale wedding." "Show me the album," Emmett said suddenly, nodding toward the photo album I'd brought down with me. I opened it to a worn page. "Here. This was taken the day Grandma Elena made the final payment on the house." The photograph showed a younger Elena, her dark hair streaked with grey, standing proudly on these very porch steps. Her nurse's uniform was wrinkled from a double shift, but her smile could have lit up the whole street. "She worked so hard," I said softly. "Night shifts at the hospital, weekends at the diner, alterations for the neighbours, whatever it took to keep this roof over our heads." Emmett studied the photo. "Tell me about that day." "I was 12. Grandma came home from the bank and gathered us all in the living room. She said, 'Miss Amores, this house is ours now, really ours.' Then she took out her old cookie tin." The memory hit me fresh as yesterday. She'd been saving dollar bills in that tin for years, but instead of celebrating by spending them, she sat us down and taught us about sacrifice, about building something that lasts. "What did she do with the money?" "Started college funds for me and Kiara." I laughed without humour. Guess which one of us actually used it for college and which one used it for a spring break trip to Cancun. Emmett leaned back in his chair, a familiar glint in his eye. "You know, speaking of lessons about sacrifice." "What are you thinking?" "Your sister wants her dream wedding, fine. But maybe it's time she learned what real sacrifice looks like. What it actually costs to build something meaningful." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on. You work in PR, Genesis. You know how to tell a story, and you've got one hell of a story right here." He tapped the photo album. "Maybe it's time everyone else heard it too." The idea started taking shape in my mind. The wedding's going to be covered by that local society magazine Mum loves so much. Exactly. And wouldn't it be interesting if another story ran that day? About a remarkable woman who worked 3 jobs to buy a house. About how that house became a symbol of family sacrifice and determination. About how her granddaughter protected that legacy, I added slowly, while others tried to sell it off for a one-day party. Emmett grinned. "Now you're getting it." I looked around the kitchen at the hand-painted cabinet and the worn spot on the counter where Grandma Elena used to knead dough, at the window where she'd watch for us coming home from school, even after working all night. "They want to talk about family values?" I said, feeling stronger than I had all evening. "Let's show them what that really means." "That's my girl." Emmett raised his water glass. "To Elena, and to teaching some overdue lessons about gratitude." I clinked my glass against his, Grandma's words echoing in my mind. "Sometimes, mi amor, the greatest act of love is standing firm when others want you to fall." Well, I was about to show them just how firmly I could stand. You want to do what? Maria, my old friend from the local news station, nearly spat out her coffee across the cafe table. I want to run a special segment, I repeated, sliding my grandmother's photo across to her. About family legacy, sacrifice, and what happens when the younger generation loses sight of those values. Maria studied the photo, then looked up at me with narrowed eyes. This wouldn't have anything to do with your sister's upcoming society wedding, would it? It has everything to do with it. I leaned forward. But it's also a legitimate story. An immigrant nurse who worked 3 jobs to provide for her family after her son-in-law abandoned them. Who built something from nothing? That's the kind of story your viewers love. And the fact that it would air during your sister's wedding reception? Pure coincidence, I said, not even trying to sound convincing. Maria sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. You know what? I'm in, but we need to make this bigger than just family drama. Give me something I can really work with. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder. I've been doing some digging. Did you know that the neighbourhood where my grandmother's house stands is one of the last historically preserved areas in the city? There's a whole movement to protect these homes from developers who want to tear them down for luxury condos. Now that's an angle, Maria said, her reporter instincts kicking in. The battle between preservation and progress, told through one family's story. Exactly, and I've got more. I showed her another document. These are the property records. My grandmother paid off that house while raising 3 kids and putting 2 through college. Meanwhile, the average home price in our area has tripled in the last decade, making it nearly impossible for working families to achieve what your grandmother did, Maria finished, already taking notes. Genesis, this is gold, but are you sure you want to do this? It's going to cause one hell of a family explosion. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Ciara. Meeting with the wedding planner tomorrow. Mum says you better be there. I showed the message to Maria. See what I'm dealing with? They're not even acknowledging that I said no to selling the house. They just keep pushing ahead, assuming I'll cave. Like you always have before? Exactly. I closed my laptop firmly. But not this time. Maria gathered her things, journalist mode fully engaged. Okay, here's what we'll do. I'll start working on the segment. Family legacy, neighbourhood preservation, the whole package. You get me more details about your grandmother, maybe some interviews with neighbours who knew her, and Genesis. She paused, giving me a serious look. Be careful at that wedding planning meeting tomorrow. Don't show your hand. Don't worry, I said, thinking of the years I'd spent managing PR crises. I know how to play this game. Later that evening, I met Emmett at our favourite bar to update him on the plan. Maria's on board, I told him, sliding onto a bar stool. But she wants to make it bigger than just our family drama. Smart woman, Emmett nodded. The more legitimate the story, the harder it'll be for your mother to dismiss it as just you being difficult. Speaking of difficult, I showed him Ciara's text about the wedding planning meeting. You're going, right? Have to. Need to keep up appearances until everything's in place. I signalled the bartender for another round. But God, sitting there listening to them plan this ridiculous extravaganza while knowing what I'm planning. Think of it as research, Emmett suggested. Every over-the-top detail they add just makes your story more powerful. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. Wear something appropriate tomorrow. The wedding planner is very exclusive. Appropriate, I scoffed, showing Emmett the message. Code for expensive enough to impress people. You know what? Emmett said, a mischievous glint in his eye. Wear your grandmother's old cardigan, the one she used to wear to work night shifts. I laughed, but then stopped. Actually, that's perfect. Subtle enough that they can't complain, but it'll help me remember exactly why I'm doing this. To Elena, Emmett raised his glass. To Justice, I added, clinking my glass against his. As we finished our drinks, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness building in my stomach. Tomorrow I'd have to sit there and smile while they planned the very event I was planning to hijack. But for once, I wasn't dreading a family obligation. This time, I had a secret weapon, the truth, and soon everyone would know it. "Is that what you're wearing?" My mother's voice cut through the air as I walked into the upscale wedding boutique, her eyes fixed on Grandma Elena's worn cardigan, a slight grimace twisting her lips. "It's comfortable," I said, settling into one of the plush white chairs. The cardigan still smelled faintly of hospital antiseptic and lavender, exactly as it had when Grandma wore it. Ciara breezed in moments later, trailing shopping bags and our mother's wedding planner, Sophia, who looked like she'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Oh my God, Jen, you look like you're heading to a nursing home," Ciara snickered, dropping into the chair beside me. I fingered the cardigan's worn sleeve. "Funny you should mention nursing. Remember when Grandma Elena would come home from her night shifts and still make us breakfast before school?" "Oh, ancient history," my mother cut in sharply. "Sophia, darling, show us those venue photos again." Sophia pulled out a tablet displaying images of an obscenely expensive hotel ballroom. With the crystal chandeliers and the imported marble flooring, it's absolutely perfect for the society wedding of the year. "Speaking of perfect," my mother said, turning to me with a practiced smile, "have you given any more thought to our discussion about the house?" I took a slow sip of the champagne they'd served us. "Actually, I have. I've been thinking a lot about family legacy lately." "Wonderful!" My mother clasped her hands together. "I'll have the realtor." "And about Grandma Elena's sacrifices," I continued, watching her smile fade. "About how she built something lasting for our family." Ciara groaned. "Oh my God, not this again. Can we focus on my wedding? Sophia, tell them about the ice sculpture idea." "It's a full-size replica of Cinderella's carriage," Sophia gushed, "with actual Swarovski crystals embedded in the ice." I couldn't help myself. "How much is that costing?" "Genesis," my mother warned. "No, I'm curious. How much are we spending on something that's literally going to melt away?" Ciara slammed her champagne glass down. "Why are you being such a bitch about this? It's my special day." "Ladies," Sophia intervened smoothly, "let's talk about the flower arrangements. We've sourced some stunning peonies." "From Canada," I finished. "Yes, Ciara mentioned that multiple times." My mother's face had taken on that dangerous calm I remembered from childhood scoldings. "Genesis, if you're not going to be helpful, perhaps you should leave." "Oh, I'm trying to be helpful," I said, standing up. "I'm trying to help you all remember what actually matters, but you're right, I should go. I have a meeting anyway." "A meeting?" Ciara scoffed. "With who?" I thought of Maria and our plans for the news segment. "Just some people who understand the value of preservation." As I reached the door, my mother called out, "The realtor will be contacting you tomorrow about viewing the house." I turned back, meeting her eyes. "Don't bother. I won't be selling." "You can't keep fighting this," she said. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. The deposits are paid. The invitations are out. The Harrises—" "The Harrises," I cut in, "aren't the ones whose grandmother worked herself to the bone for that house. I am, and I'm done discussing this." I left them sitting there among their luxury wedding catalogues and empty champagne glasses. Outside, my phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Got the interviews with your old neighbours? They had amazing stories about Elena. This segment is going to be powerful." Another text followed quickly. "Also, found some interesting financial records. Call me." I smiled, thinking of my mother's perfectly curated public image and Ciara's carefully crafted social media presence. They were so focused on appearances, on what the Harrises and their society friends would think. Well, they were about to find out what real people thought about selling off a family legacy for a one-day party. My phone rang. It was Emmett. "How'd it go?" he asked. "About as well as you'd expect. They're still acting like the house sale is a done deal. Mum's even sending a realtor tomorrow." "Perfect," he said. "The more they push, the better our story gets. By the way, I talked to my friend at the Historical Society. He's willing to go on camera about the importance of preserving neighbourhoods like yours." "You're amazing," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude for having him in my corner. "I know." "Oh, and Genesis, please tell me you wore the cardigan." "Of course. Mum looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. His laugh carried me all the way to my car. 3 weeks until the wedding. 3 weeks until they learned what happens when you push too far. 3 weeks until justice would be served. Live on local news. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Maria asked, replaying the rough cut of the news segment on her laptop. We were sitting in my grandmother's kitchen, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. On screen, my old neighbour, Mrs. Rodriguez, was speaking through tears. "Elena worked so hard for that house. She'd be heartbroken to see it sold for a party. Heartbroken." I reached forward and paused the video. "Play the financial records part again." Maria clicked back. A series of documents filled the screen: bank statements, property records, and hospital pay stubs. "Your grandmother made exactly $23,367 in the year she bought this house," Maria narrated. "She put every penny into keeping it, even working through pneumonia one winter." The doorbell rang, making us both jump. "Expecting someone?" Maria asked, closing her laptop. I checked my phone and froze. 3 missed calls from my mother. Oh, God! Through the front window I could see Wyatt, Chiara's fiancé, standing on my porch. Of all people, I hadn't expected him. "Quick, pack up," I told Maria. "Use the back door. I'll handle this." After Maria slipped out, I opened the front door. Wyatt stood there in his expensive suit, looking uncomfortable. "Genesis," he said, shifting his weight. "Can we talk?" I led him into the living room, where he perched awkwardly on Grandma Elena's old armchair. "Nice place," he said, looking around. "Very homey." "That's one way to put it. Why are you here, Wyatt?" He cleared his throat. "Ciara's upset. She says you're trying to ruin the wedding by refusing to sell this place." "Did she tell you why this house matters?" "Something about your grandmother?" He shrugged. "Look, I get it. Sentimental value and all that. But my family has certain expectations for this wedding. We're talking about my future wife's happiness here." I studied him carefully. "Did you know my grandmother worked 3 jobs to buy this house?" "No, but did you know she raised us here after our father walked out? That she skipped meals sometimes to make sure we had enough?" Wyatt looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Genesis, the past is the past. We're talking about Chiara's future. Our future." "A future built on selling out our family's legacy?" "It's just a house," he said, echoing my sister's words from that dinner. I stood up. "No, it's not just a house, but you'll understand that soon enough." "What's that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Emmett. "News segment final cut ready. It's powerful. You need to see this." "I think you should go," I told Wyatt. "Tell Ciara I'm not selling. Not now, not ever." After he left, I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. Seeing Wyatt, hearing him dismiss my grandmother's sacrifice so casually, it made my blood boil, but it also made me question everything. I called Emmett. "I just had a visit from the future brother-in-law," I said when he answered. "And?" "And, I don't know, Emmett. Am I doing the right thing? This could blow up their whole wedding." "Come over," he said firmly, "right now." 20 minutes later, I was in Emmett's apartment, watching the final cut of the news segment. It was beautiful, powerful, and devastating. Maria had outdone herself. "If you pull the plug now," Emmett said as the video ended, "you're letting them win, letting them erase everything your grandmother built." "But—" "No buts. Look at this." He pulled out his phone and showed me Chiara's latest Instagram post. A photo of her trying on a designer wedding dress with the caption, "Only the best for a Harris bride. Yaj bling bling. Your society wedding." "She posted that right after Wyatt left your house," Emmett said. "They're not even pretending to care about what this means to you." I took a deep breath, remembering Grandma Elena's words. "Stand up for what matters, mi amor, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "You're right," I said. "Play it again." We watched the segment one more time. The interviews with neighbours who remembered my grandmother, the documents showing her decades of sacrifice, the current market value of the house versus what an average nurse could afford today, And finally, the part about how her own family wanted to sell it all for a one-day celebration. 3 more days, Emmett said softly. Are you ready? I thought of Wyatt's dismissive attitude, of my mother's manipulation, of Chiara's endless demands. Then I thought of my grandmother, coming home exhausted from night shifts, but still making time to teach us about dignity and worth. I'm ready, I said. Let's show them what family legacy really means. The die was cast. In 3 days they'd learn their lesson. Live on local news. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. I stood in front of my grandmother's old vanity mirror, adjusting the bridesmaid's dress my sister had chosen. A hideous pink confection that cost more than 3 months of Grandma Elena's nursing salary. My phone buzzed. Maria. News van in position. Everything set for 2 p.m. broadcast. Another buzz. Emmett, you okay? Before I could respond, someone pounded on my front door. I opened it to find my mother, already dressed for the wedding, her face flushed with anger. The realtor just called, she snapped, pushing past me into the house. She says you've filed paperwork to have the house designated as a historical landmark. I smoothed my dress. Did she? How interesting. Interesting. Genesis, this is sabotage. The wedding starts in 4 hours and you're still playing these childish games. Childish? I walked to the kitchen and pulled out Grandma Elena's old cookie tin from the cabinet. Let me show you something, Mum. I opened the tin and pulled out a stack of papers. These are Grandma's pay stubs. Every extra shift, every holiday worked. And these? I pulled out more documents. Medical bills she paid off for us, college fund contributions, home repair receipts. What's your point? My point is that this house isn't just an asset to be liquidated for Chiara's perfect day. It's years of sacrifice. It's family. My mother's face softened slightly. Sweetheart, I know you loved your grandmother, but she would have wanted... Don't. My voice shook. Don't you dare tell me what she would have wanted. You barely visited her when she was sick. I was busy. We were all busy. I still came. Every day. I sat with her while she told me stories about building a life here, about making something from nothing. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Chiara, already in her wedding dress, mascara running down her face. The florist just called, she wailed. They can't get the Canadian peonies through customs. Everything is ruined. Our mother rushed to comfort her. Darling, we'll figure something out. Genesis, make yourself useful and call around to local florists. I checked my phone instead. Another text from Maria. Interview with Historical Society expert recorded and ready. This story's going to be huge. Genesis, my mother snapped. Your sister needs you. I looked at them both. My mother cradling Chiara, who was sobbing about flowers that cost more than Grandma Elena made in a month. Neither of them sparing a glance for the house around them, the home that held our history in every crack and corner. I have to go check on something, I said, grabbing my purse. I'll meet you at the church. If you ruin this wedding, Chiara called after me, I'll never forgive you. I paused at the door. You know what's funny? Grandma Elena used to say that forgiveness was free, but trust had to be earned. I wonder what she'd say about trying to sell her life's work for party decorations. I left them standing in the hallway, surrounded by the ghost of a woman whose sacrifices they'd forgotten. At the local news station, Maria was putting the finishing touches on the segment. Last chance to back out, she said, watching me pace. No turning back now. I checked my watch. The reception starts at 1:30. You'll go live at 2 hours? Right when the speeches begin. She hesitated. Genesis, this is going to change everything. Your family needs to remember where they came from, I finished. Need to remember what really matters. My phone buzzed again. Emmett. In position at the reception hall. You sure about this? I typed back. Absolutely. One last text came through, this time from my mother. Where are you? The ceremony starts in an hour. Don't you dare embarrass us in front of the Harrises. I looked at the final cut of the news segment playing on Maria's screen, at the images of my grandmother, young and determined, standing in front of her newly purchased home, at the interviews with neighbours who remembered her kindness, at the documentation of her struggles and sacrifices. "Ready to head to the church?" Maria asked. I touched Grandma Elena's cardigan, which I tucked into my purse. I put it on right before the broadcast, a silent tribute to the woman who taught me about standing up for what matters. "Ready," I said. "Let's go show them what real family values look like." The next 2 hours would change everything, and for once I couldn't wait for my family to watch the news. The wedding reception was in full swing when I slipped Grandma Elena's cardigan over my bridesmaid dress. Across the grand ballroom, my mother was chatting with Mrs. Harris, both of them laughing that artificial society laugh. Chiara and Wyatt were making their rounds, accepting congratulations and showing off her obscenely expensive ring. 2 minutes, Emmett whispered, appearing at my elbow. "Maria's team is ready." I nodded, watching the giant screens that had been set up to display wedding photos. In moments, they would show something very different. "Ladies and gentlemen," the wedding planner announced, "please take your seats for the speeches and special presentations." My mother caught my eye from across the room and frowned at the cardigan. I saw her excuse herself from Mrs. Harris and start making her way toward me. She never made it. The screens flickered, and suddenly my grandmother's face filled every display in the ballroom. The room fell silent. "Good afternoon," Maria's voice came through the speakers. "I'm Maria Rivera with Channel 7 News, bringing you a special report on family legacy, sacrifice, and the true cost of the American dream." "Genesis!" my mother hissed, reaching me at last. "What is this?" "This is Elena Rodriguez," Maria's voice continued as more photos of my grandmother appeared. A nurse who worked 3 jobs to provide for her family. This is her story. The ballroom erupted in whispers as the segment continued. Old neighbours appeared on screen, sharing stories about my grandmother. Hospital colleagues spoke about her dedication. Property records and pay stubs flashed across the screen, showing exactly what it took for an immigrant nurse to secure a future for her family. "Turn it off!" Chiara shrieked, her white dress rustling as she rushed toward the wedding planner. "We can't," the planner said, looking panicked. "It's broadcasting live." Then came the part about the present day, about how that same house, bought with decades of sacrifice, was now being demanded as payment for a society wedding. The camera cut to Maria standing in front of my grandmother's house. But one person stood up to protect this legacy. Genesis O'Connor, Elena's eldest granddaughter, refused to sell this symbol of immigrant success and family determination. The cameras switched to my pre-recorded interview. I watched myself on screen, sitting in Grandma Elena's kitchen, wearing her cardigan. "This house represents everything my grandmother believed in," my recorded self said. "Hard work, sacrifice, family, real family, not the kind you can buy with imported flowers and ice sculptures." "Genesis," my mother's voice was dangerous now, "what have you done?" But I couldn't answer because Wyatt's mother, Mrs. Harris, was suddenly standing in front of me. "Is this true?" she demanded. "Your grandmother worked 3 jobs to buy that house." "Yes," I said firmly, "night shifts at the hospital, weekends at the diner, sewing alterations at night. Everything she did for us." "And they wanted you to sell it?" Mrs. Harris turned to glare at my mother. "For wedding decorations?" On the screens, the segment was showing footage of Grandma Elena's last days, when she was still teaching me to make empanadas in her kitchen. Her voice, weak but determined, filled the ballroom. "Remember, mi amor, some things are worth more than money. Some things you must protect." "You've humiliated us," Chiara screamed, storming over. "This is my wedding day." "No," Mrs. Harris cut in, surprising everyone. "She's honoured your grandmother's memory, which is more than I can say for some people." The room had divided into clusters of whispering guests. I could hear fragments. 3 jobs. Can you imagine? And they wanted to sell it. "Mom?" Wyatt's voice carried across the silence. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Harris drew herself up to her full height. "I'm remembering where I came from, dear. My own mother worked as a housekeeper to put me through school. I've never told you because I was ashamed. But watching this..." She gestured to the screens where photos of Grandma Elena's life were still playing. This young woman is right. Some things are worth more than money. Ciara's mascara was running again. But the peonies, the ice sculpture, were nothing compared to what your grandmother built, Mrs. Harris finished. She turned to me. Thank you for reminding us all what really matters. My mother stood frozen, her perfect mask cracking as her carefully curated society image crumbled. Ciara had collapsed into a chair, her expensive dress pooling around her. And me? I stood there in my grandmother's cardigan, feeling her strength around me like a shield. The segment ended with a final image of Grandma Elena on her porch steps, proud and strong, followed by the words, dedicated to those who build legacies, not luxuries. In the stunned silence that followed, I finally understood what Grandma Elena meant when she said, sometimes, mi amor, the truth is the greatest revenge of all. The morning sun streamed through Grandma Elena's kitchen window as I kneaded dough on the worn counter, just as she had taught me. The familiar scent of baking empanadas filled the house. The doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door to find my mother standing there, looking smaller somehow without her usual perfect makeup and designer clothes. You're baking, she said, noting the flour on my hands. Grandma's recipe. I left the door open and returned to the kitchen. To my surprise, she followed. I remember this, she said softly, running her hand along the counter's edge. She used to make them every Sunday. Until you stopped coming to visit. She sank into one of the kitchen chairs. The segment's gone viral, you know. Local news picked it up, then national. People keep sharing it, talking about immigrant success stories and family legacy. I know. I slid the tray into the oven. Mrs. Harris called yesterday. She's starting a foundation to help working families buy homes in historically significant neighbourhoods. Of course she is. My mother's laugh was bitter. She's also withdrawn from the country club, says she needs to reassess her values. I turned to face her. Why are you here, Mum? She pulled something from her purse, an old creased photograph. I found this in my desk. It's from the day we moved in here. The photo showed my mother, young and smiling, helping Grandma Elena plant flowers in the front yard. They both looked so happy, so connected. What happened to us, I asked. When did appearances become more important than this? I don't know. Her voice cracked. After your father left, I was so afraid of being seen as less, of you girls having less. I thought if we could just look successful enough, be accepted by the right people. We already had everything we needed. We had Grandma Elena. We had this house. Ciara's moving back home, she said abruptly. To her old room here, if you'll allow it. The wedding's been postponed. Wyatt? Well, his mother's influence runs deep in their social circle. And you? I've been thinking about what your grandmother would say to me right now. She touched the worn kitchen table. About how I lost my way. The timer dinged. I pulled the empanadas from the oven, their golden brown crust perfect, just like Grandma Elena used to make. She would say, I replied, placing the hot tray on the counter, La familia es como las raíces de un árbol. Family is like the roots of a tree. Without strong roots, nothing else matters, my mother finished, surprising me. She told me that the day we moved in here. The front door opened, and Emmett's voice called out, Something smells amazing. He appeared in the kitchen doorway with Maria, both stopping short at the sight of my mother. Perfect timing, I said, breaking the tension. The empanadas are ready. Just like Elena used to make, Maria said, taking a seat. She'd be proud, Genesis, not just of the cooking. My mother stood awkwardly. I should go. Stay, I said, surprising myself. Help me teach them Grandma's recipe. It's time these walls heard some new family stories. She hesitated, then slowly removed her designer jacket and reached for an apron. The secret, she said, her voice trembling slightly, is in how you fold the dough. Mama Elena always said you have to do it with love. As we gathered around the kitchen table, my mother, my friends and me, sharing food and memories, I felt Grandma Eleanor's presence all around us. In the worn counter where she taught me to cook. In the window where she watched for us coming home. In the love she built into every corner of this house. My phone buzzed with a text from Ciara. "Can I come home tomorrow?" I showed the message to my mother, who had flour on her cheek and tears in her eyes. "Tell her yes," I said, "but first she needs to learn Grandma's recipe." "We all do," my mother said softly. "We all need to remember." Outside, the porch steps creaked in the familiar way they always had, but now they seemed to speak not of the past, but of the future, of new memories to be made, of a legacy preserved, of a family finding its way back to what matters. Grandma Elena once told me that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the fight, but in bringing people back to their roots. Looking around her kitchen now, at these people learning to become family again, I finally understood what she meant. Some things really are worth more than money, some things really are worth fighting for, and sometimes the best revenge is showing people the truth they've forgotten and giving them a chance to remember.